Will Trump supporters admit that they were wrong? Well, this is an interesting question, and it's a different question from the question of will Trump voters admit that they were wrong? The answer to whether or not Trump voters will admit that they were wrong is a resounding yes, because about 77 million people voted for him, and certainly within the next 4 years, at least one of those people is going to be like, yeah, I regret this. And you know what? There already have been people saying they regret this. Just go look at all the posts on Facebook, on X. There's all sorts of stuff like, wow, I just got fired from my job because of President Trump, Elon Musk, in the government. I don't appreciate this. I don't approve this. And although they may not be making typical, liberal talking points, liberal refrains, leftist critiques of the Trump administration, they're saying, hey, he did this thing that made my life worse. I am now deprived of my federal government job. There are also people who are having confrontations with ICE as a result of the Trump administration and the mass deportation plan that he and Tom Homan, a deportation zealot, have laid out. And so they're not appreciating that. So there are people who voted for Trump who perhaps did not fully think of the implications of a second Trump administration, and they are not happy with how things are going. They have suffered some consequences as a result of it, some adverse consequences, and they are publicly admitting that perhaps they were wrong, or at least it was less of a good idea to vote for Trump than it seemed like it. So he obviously was the candidate, the outsider candidate, and a lot of these people got swept up in the whole, oh, we need to fix these prices, we need to get them down again. They were supposedly low during Trump's first term. They were really high under a lot of Biden's term. So we can't vote for Democrat Kamala Harris. She's part of the Biden administration. She's his VP. We need to vote for Trump. And so they got swept up in that rah-rah, outsider good, insider bad, establishment bad hysteria, and they cast their vote for a deranged candidate like Trump. But will the supporters of Trump finally admit that they were wrong? It's an interesting question. Trump has now been a political figure in mainstream, Republican politics now for almost 10 years. He launched his campaign in June 2015. So some of these people might go back to June 2015. Some of the younger people, since it's been 10 years, like there's some, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who probably support him and don't remember his first time running or even his second time running while he was the president, but they see him as president now, and they saw him in the election against Kamala Harris, and they thought he seemed real cool. So will those people regret their vote? I don't know, because a lot of those young people, those super young people, like college students, for example, they're not federal workers, but they might be getting offers from the federal government after they graduate, and then those offers are getting rescinded by the Trump administration and their decisions to do mass firings and to gut the administrative state. So they might grow to really dislike the Trump administration over that. The deportation plan, again, we start depriving people of their workforce. A lot of those people happen to be illegal immigrants. And so when we start getting rid of those people, it's like, shoot, who's going to do these jobs? It might bring the price of things up. It might leave employers scrambling. So there might be some employers who voted for Trump who are like, yeah, I don't like this, but support Trump though. Supporting Trump at this point has started to become cult-like. And when I say support Trump, I don't just mean vote for him. I mean, they were guaranteed to vote for him from the start. They are not low propensity voters. They are people who knew well before the 2024 election that if Trump was on the ballot, they would vote for him. Whether it's because he's a Republican or because they just think that Trump's so cool and they'd vote for him regardless of his political party. But yeah, these hardcore Trump supporters, the people who have been behind him for almost 10 years now, is there anything that he could do to get them to abandon him? The people that he picked up in his first term, the people who say stuff like the election was stolen, that they're willing to go that far, overlook so many facts, so much objective reality. Will he do anything that finally makes them say, enough is enough? It's a good question. I think this term is turning out to be more extreme than the first so far, with the constant constitutional violations, not to say there weren't any in his first term, but this one is absolutely insane, just trampling all over the First Amendment and separation of powers in just this hysterical way, deporting pro-Palestine protesters, censoring people. Yeah, like putting Elon Musk in the federal government, a man who's totally unelected. The government is supposed to be elected. And yeah, the executive branch is not supposed to exercise this much power. Unitary executive theory is baseless. It has no basis in the Constitution whatsoever. There were some far-right justices, or I should say right-leaning justices, who embraced that far right theory, because on some other issues they actually weren't so far right. But Trump is like, yeah, no, the Heritage Foundation, their plan for unitary executive theory, that's great. He said, I am the law. But look, that's just me being obsessed with norms and policy and the Constitution and things that regular Americans might not know that much about. Will regular Americans pay attention to other stuff, though, like prices? The answer is yes. So will hardcore Trump supporters see that he is failing to bring down prices, and if anything, those prices are going up, 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 up? Maybe. But will they blame him for it? That is the question. I tend to believe they will not. I tend to believe that even if we're years into the Trump administration and prices continue to go up and, with no end in sight, they'll still be like, oh yeah, no, it has something to do with Biden. It has something to do with something else. Oh, maybe it's the Democrats in Congress' fault, even though they've got minorities in both chambers. You have to remember that Trump and his supporters are experts at playing the blame game. So maybe deep in their heart of hearts, they would know that Trump actually may be culpable for the high prices that we're going to get under him, but they won't blame him. They'll find some way to rationalize, or they might admit that he did some things wrong. It does happen. It's rare, but it does happen. For example, he was booed at his own rally for talking about Operation Warp Speed, boasting about how he got the vaccine done in 2020 under his administration, got that vaccine pushed out very fast. He was booed for it. So look, are they completely incapable of thinking for themselves? Maybe not. They're attending a Trump rally and they're booing Donald Trump himself. Maybe there's a handful of his supporters who are willing to break with him on some things. But on economics, I don't know. I think they're just going to pretend he's doing everything right. I feel like the vaccine, it's such a culture war, government type issue. And also the fact that, Biden, after Trump pushed out the vaccine, Biden tried to do a vaccine mandate that was not popular among these people, not popular with RFK Jr. Not popular with Ron DeSantis, one of Trump's rivals, actually, and a guy who overall is actually pretty similar to Trump in terms of policy, not so much in terms of demeanor. He's more sophisticated. But it's Trump's lack of sophistication that I think makes him so appealing to a lot of these people. So what if he starts becoming more of an establishment simp? More of just an unapologetic neocon. And the thing is, he already is an unapologetic neocon. He talks about, Greenland, Panama, take over Canada, make it the 51st state. He's talked about these things in his State of the Union address and gotten applause from Republicans. So how much farther can he go? I just don't know. How much can he cuck himself to the deep state and get away with it with his base? You would think that Pete Hegseth would make these people cringe with some of his neocon beliefs, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be having that effect. So people are losing their jobs as a result of Trump. I talked about that. And some of them are like, yeah, why did I vote for this guy? There's videos of it. There's Facebook posts of it. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's Trump and freaking Elon Musk screwed me over out of my government job. I don't have a job anymore. I shouldn't have voted that way. I should have voted for Harris, or I should have not voted. There are people recognizing that. That's the Trump voters, though. The supporters. Where are the ex-Trump supporters? And I do have to say, too, let's be honest. Will there be some so-called former Trump supporters that are not former Trump supporters, that might be Democrats kind of cynically being like, oh yeah, I used to support Trump, but now I don't? Yeah. And there are people the other way too. People that go, oh, I used to be on the left, but now I'm on the right. There might be some AstroTurf X accounts that come out saying, I used to be a Trump supporter, but now I don't support him because of all this stuff. And it might be someone who was just a Democrat or a leftist all along. In which case it's like, okay, that's not really a W because it's just a person pretending. A W is when we have a Trump supporter who gets converted. And hopefully, the ideal is that they get converted through good, solid reasoning and argumentation. Stuff like what I try to do on my channel. I make arguments based on what the U.S. Constitution says and how what Trump does is incompatible with the U.S. Constitution, as well as policy, basic pro-working class policies like jobs, wages, healthcare, coverage for pre-existing conditions, all that stuff. Social Security, Medicaid. I talk about all that stuff and how it improves people's lives, and Trump's adversity toward it is just going to harm average working people. And so I hope to win over people who might be winnable Trump supporters. Not all of them are winnable. Some of them are going to be with him forever and ever. He's got them on lock. They will always vote for whoever he tells them to vote for. They will always vote for him. They will never regret their vote for him. But can good rhetoric and, on its own, can it win over Trump supporters, get them to say, okay, you know what, that was a really good point? At this point, I do wonder if it's possible. My rhetoric might work on people who vote for Trump and are prone to regretting it. There are low propensity voters who are like pulled the lever for Trump in this election, and they're like, you know what, that Morris guy, he was right. This guy was not a good candidate. But the Trump supporters, I don't know. It seems like he's got them on lock so much. The people who've been with him since the very beginning, like they've done this for almost 10 years. They're not just going to abandon him now. Unless things get really, really bad and they unequivocally learn that Trump is the cause of it. And make no mistake, he will be the cause of quite a few bad things coming up. Not all, not everything is a result of the president. Just as some of the bad things that happened under Biden weren't his fault, some bad things will happen under Trump and they will not be his fault. But, who knows? Maybe people will just see bad things happening under him and think, wow, I thought that things were better under Trump the first time. I thought that things were bad under Biden, but now things are terrible under Trump too. So I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have voted for him. Maybe my support for him was ill-founded. Maybe he doesn't care much about policy. But the problem is that a lot of Trump supporters don't care that much about policy either. Trump could say whatever he wants about any policy, almost any policy, and they'd go along with him. I think the one red line for them is the vaccine mandates. If he came out in support of vaccine mandates, maybe that would get his hardcore supporters to abandon his base. But I feel like he could be like pro-DEI or pro-affirmative action, and they would be like, this is a 4D chess move. It's actually really good. Those policies are amazing when Trump supports them. But we've already seen, and this is so blackpilling, so disheartening, we've already seen Trump supporters saying that high prices are actually patriotic to pay. I talked in my video recently called Does MAGA Want Higher Prices Now? About how I overheard a conversation of a guy saying Trump's tariffs are actually patriotic. They're going to raise prices, but we have to pay higher prices to beat our foreign adversaries in trade. I'm like, really? So now you support higher prices? So you don't actually oppose high prices on principle. You think, oh yeah, I'm willing to pay more for this or that. You just like, oh, Biden's high prices, obviously they have to be bad, but Trump's, they have to be good. Talk about working backwards from your conclusions. That, I fear, is what plagues far too many Trump supporters, is that they're going to work backwards from their conclusions. They're going to say, well, I need to find a way to make Trump the hero. I need to find a way to never abandon him, a way to stay stuck to him, stay in his cult. I cannot admit that he did something wrong. And especially, they would never admit that Trump was a wrong choice compared to Kamala Harris in the 2024 election or Joe Biden in the 2020 election. They would never admit the Democrat was better. But can we get them unglued from the magnetism of Trump? It's possible. It's possible. I'm not super hopeful at this point. We need to win over the Trump voters, but among the Trump voters, the supporters, the dyed-in-the-wool, true MAGA types, the ones who actually wear MAGA hats and voted for him in 2016 and 2020 and would vote for him in 2028 and probably want him to run in 2028. They want the 22nd Amendment abolished. They want a third Trump term. Those people just seem so hard to win over, and almost no amount of circumstances, crazy adverse consequences that they could suffer as a result of Trump would get them to change their mind, because they would always have a way of coping that comes back to blaming the Democrats and vindicating Trump. It can't be Trump's fault because this or that. It has to be Biden's fault. It has to be the Democrats in Congress's fault. Maybe they'll blame Republicans, Rhino Republicans. Yeah, I don't like the Republican Party, but Donald Trump is totally fine. He's the good Republican. That's actually not that uncommon among hardcore Trump supporters, is they don't purport to like the Republican Party that much. They like the MAGA Republicans, but they say, oh, the rest of them, they're just rhinos, they're moderates. They'll say, oh, Ronald Reagan was a cuck. He was a leftist Republican. So was George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush. Even though their tax policies were ultimately pretty similar to President Trump's, pretty similar. George H.W. Bush was a good bit different, but George W. Bush and Ronald Reagan, both staunchly right-wing, albeit in some different ways. Donald Trump, the furthest right-wing of them all. But those other two have plenty of similarities with him. Yeah, it's their disillusionment with the two-party system that leads them to support Trump. But ironically, Trump, in a lot of ways, governs like an establishment Republican, except puts the authoritarianism on steroids. So this purging the administrative state thing, don't get me wrong, that happened under George W. Bush. He was someone who deregulated a lot. President Reagan was especially hostile to the EPA, but Trump is like taking an axe to it. And this Elon Musk thing is totally unprecedented. I don't know. Will Trump supporters see Elon Musk and what he's doing and be like, you know, Trump seems like a dupe. He's letting Elon Musk run everything. I don't know. I think as long as Trump continues to sing Elon Musk's praise, they will never abandon Elon Musk. But what happens if Trump stops doing that? What happens if there's a falling out? Will they say, oh, you know what? Trump wasn't very smart to just go along with Elon Musk. I'm glad that he kicked him out now, but it's kind of sad that he was a sucker for him that long. Interesting possibility. I don't know. I think they'll rationalize. They'll find a way to vindicate Trump. They won't admit that he's dumb or that he's not good at associating himself with people. You know, he fired so many people in his first administration, and they're still like, oh yeah, we trust him again this time because he's going to appoint real, true loyalists. And it's like, well, he probably wanted loyalists the first time. The second time, who's to say they'll end up being perfect loyalists? Who's to say? I mean, Kash Patel, okay, that guy's probably going to be a loyalist. That guy is insane. Probably the worst pick of all of Trump's administration. But the rest of them, I don't know. I could see a falling out. I could see a falling out with Tulsi Gabbard. She did used to be a Democrat. There might be something there. RFK Jr. even, maybe. Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments below about how Trump supporters might come to admit that they were wrong, to distance themselves from Trump. How possible is it? Do you agree with me on the distinction between supporters and voters? Like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. This has been The More the Merrier, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.